In cities that never sleep, some buildings do, but what haunts them never rests. Welcome to Ghosts of Asia, where echoes linger in hallways no longer walked, and silence tells stories louder than screams. Tonight, we sweep beneath the carpets of memory. We descend into an office tower abandoned by time, but still polished, still spotless, still waiting. This is the story of a man who never stopped working, a mop in his hand, regret in his eyes, and stains that return no matter how hard he scrubs. The janitor who cleans empty rooms. Listen closely, because even in the quietest corners of concrete and glass, someone is still cleaning, and he's not alone.
The elevator chimed like a tired bell, faint, hollow, half forgotten. Mr. Lau stepped inside with his cart, wheels creaking beneath plastic bins filled with bleach bottles, rags, and a mop that had absorbed far more than water over the years. The building groaned faintly around him, as if it disliked being disturbed after hours. This was how it always began. At 11:57 p.m. sharp, Mr. Lau clocked in. The office tower, once a glass monument of productivity, was now half-rented, barely lit, and hushed by the absence of ambition. On paper, it closed at 6. In reality, no one truly left. Not really. He reached for the button labeled 9, his fingers stained with cleaner and time. That was his floor. Every night, every shift. Floor 9 hadn't been leased in over a decade, but it always needed cleaning. Always. The elevator shook as it rose, soft mechanical whirring, the same hum he had heard for the past 19 years, a rhythm he trusted more than any heartbeat. When the doors slid open, a familiar scent drifted toward him. Bleach. And something else. Smoke? No, not cigarette smoke, not wood. Something older, more acrid, like burnt plastic or... He blinked the thought away. Room 913 stood at the end of the hallway, as it always had. Its frosted glass window bore no label, no nameplate, just a rectangle of darkness beyond the glass. And each time he passed, the light above it flickered, just once. Tonight, it flickered 3 times. He grunted, pulled his cart forward, and tried not to look at the door. The hallway carpet swallowed the sound of his steps. That was the thing about the 9th floor. It didn't echo. It breathed. Dust gathered no matter how many times he wiped the desks. Papers reappeared in recycling bins. The same crumpled flyer from 2007, end-of-year staff party, karaoke and sushi, showed up in the same corner bin every Wednesday. He learned not to question it. He began with the corner restroom. His mop slid across the cracked tiles with a tired sigh. As he wiped down the mirrors, he paused, not because of what he saw, but because of what he didn't see. His reflection. Only the mop. Only the sink. Only the broken clock, frozen at 3:13. Mr. Lau stepped back, blinked. Then there he was again, face lined like an old receipt, eyes dull from too many nights. Need new bulbs, he muttered, though none had gone out. He rolled the cart down the hall toward the conference room. That's when he smelled it again. Bleach, burnt plastic, and now, cologne. Old cologne. Something musky, faintly floral. Something a man might wear when he had someone to impress. It came from room 913. He paused. The light flickered again. He stared at the door. He had never cleaned inside that room, never been asked to. The handle had always been cold, always locked. But tonight, it was ajar. Just slightly. Just enough. He took one step closer. The smell grew sharper, not like perfume anymore. Now it was something sour, like sweat sealed in an old wool suit, like mildew in closed drapes, like something that had waited too long to be noticed. He reached out and gently pushed the door open. Nothing. The room was dark, windowless, walls bare. A single office chair sat in the middle of the floor, turned away, facing the far corner. He flicked the light switch. Nothing. A sigh escaped his lips and he turned to leave, then stopped. A footprint. Just one. In the dust, near the threshold. A right shoe. Men's, size 10 maybe. The heel smudged, as if someone had been dragged backward. His eyes followed the faint trail, but it disappeared halfway across the room. He closed the door slowly. It didn't latch, so he pulled a rag from his cart and stuffed it into the hinge to keep it shut. Some doors didn't want to stay closed. By 1:17 a.m., he had cleaned the pantry, the hallway glass, and 3 empty offices. Each one felt heavier tonight, not physically, spiritually, as if the rooms resented being touched, as if he was disturbing some slow ritual of dust returning to dust. At 1:42 a.m., he took his break in the stairwell, the same one where the motion sensor light no longer worked. He sat with his thermos of warm tea and an old transistor radio playing a fuzzy Cantonese love song from the 80s. A woman's voice, soft, longing, sang about waiting by the window night after night. He wondered if she was still alive, if anyone remembered her voice. Mr. Lau didn't smoke, but tonight he felt like he should have. Instead, he stared at the exit sign above the stairwell door. Its glow was dimmer than usual, flickering, almost twitching like a dying eye. He took a long sip of tea and whispered to no one, "I'll finish the floor just like always." He didn't notice the smudge mark on his pant leg, the same dusty print from the footprint inside room 913. By 3:13 a.m., he was done. He always finished at 3:13. Not earlier, not later. Even when he rushed, even when he slacked, it always ended then. He returned to the elevator, pressed G. As the doors closed, the hallway light above room 913 blinked one final time. Then stayed on.
Mr. Lau had stopped checking the building's tenant list a long time ago. Each year, another name would vanish. A law firm folded, a design studio relocated, an NGO disappeared into silence. But floor 9 remained in stasis. No renters, no listings, no activity. And yet, it never felt empty. At 11:58 p.m. the next evening, the elevator doors opened without him pressing the button. The cart in front of him trembled slightly, as if caught in a sudden gust, though there was no wind,
No breeze in the lobby, no draft. Just an elevator waiting like a loyal dog. He frowned and stepped in. The button for floor 9 was already glowing. As he rolled down the corridor, the lights seemed dimmer than the night before, but the vending machine in the break room still hummed, still lit, still full. He passed the trash bin outside Office 918 and paused. Takeout containers. Fresh. Still warm. A pair of disposable chopsticks sat neatly across the top, tucked into a paper napkin. Mr. Lau reached out and touched the container. It was warm to the touch. Not recently discarded, recently eaten. He stared at it. The label read, Lotus Kitchen, Bon Kun, 10:37 p.m. 10:37. Tonight. But no one had swiped into the building. The front desk scanner was empty. He would have heard the alarm if someone used the fire stairs. So who? His eyes drifted to the closed office door beside him. A faint light glowed beneath it. He didn't knock, didn't open it. Instead, he wheeled his cart quietly away, as if disturbing the space would be rude, like interrupting a meeting he had no right to hear. He would circle back later. If the door was still open, he might check. At 1:15 a.m., while polishing the corner windows of the conference room, Mr. Lau heard a sound he hadn't heard in years. Typing. Not from a phone, not digital taps. It was the mechanical clack of old plastic keys, the kind used in boxy desktop keyboards from the late 1990s. That slow, firm rhythm of someone who knew their letters, someone who had done this too many times. Click, clack, pause, click, click, click. It came from Office 912. He stood in silence. The walls were thin, but he had never heard anything through them before. Not a cough, not a step. But now the typing grew faster, urgent, desperate. He approached the door slowly, ears straining. The typing stopped. Suddenly, as if the person inside had realized they were being listened to. Mr. Lau stepped back. The fluorescent light above him buzzed, then popped, showering the air with a faint mist of burnt gas. Darkness. Silence. He turned his cart and moved away quickly. But in the quiet behind him, the typing started again. By 2:03 a.m., the break room felt different again. The air was too warm again. The microwave display blinked 000 over and over as if just powered on. But no one had touched it. The plug hadn't moved. The fridge door was ajar. Inside, he found a can of Coke Light with a manufacturing date stamped 2002. Still cold. He closed the fridge slowly and turned to leave when he noticed something scratched on the linoleum table. Not carved, written with an old ballpoint pen. Meeting rescheduled. Tell men not to come in today. No signature, no date. Just a sentence from the past clinging to a surface no one should have used in years. Mr. Lau ran his finger across the ink. It smudged. Still fresh. He finished mopping at 3:12 a.m., just in time. He always did. And as he stood by the elevator, ready to descend, he heard a soft ding from behind him. He turned. The elevator on the opposite side of the floor, the freight one used by movers, had opened on its own. Inside was nothing but shadows. But the floor indicator read 9. He hadn't called that elevator. No one had. He looked back at his own elevator. Its doors had quietly shut. Now, only the freight lift was open, humming softly like it had been waiting. Mr. Lau didn't move, didn't step forward, didn't load his cart. Instead, he whispered to himself, "I'm not taking that one," and wheeled his cart toward the stairwell instead. As he descended, the lights above him went out one by one. Click, click, click. By the time he reached the 6th floor landing, only darkness remained above, but the air still smelled of bleach and something older, the scent of someone cleaning and never leaving. There were stains that simply refused to leave. Mr. Lau had learned this early in his career. Coffee spills, ink marks, the faint outline of a shoe where someone had kicked a wall in anger. Time carved its own graffiti into everything. It only pretended to wash away. But this one was different. It started 3 nights after the elevator incident. He had walked into the large meeting room on the north corner of the 9th floor, mop bucket in hand, when his shoes made a faint squelch sound. The floor was damp. At first, he thought it was just condensation from the faulty air conditioner. Then he saw it, a dark patch beneath the oval meeting table. Faint, almost invisible in the low light, but there, spreading outward in uneven edges like an old bruise on the carpet. He knelt down. The air smelled sharp, metallic. Not mold, not coffee, something else. He dipped his rag in bleach, wrung it tight, and pressed down. The stain didn't fade. It deepened. He scrubbed harder until his hands trembled. Each motion echoed in the hollow silence of the room, a rhythm of futility. He stopped only when his knees started aching. When he stood up again, the patch was gone. He exhaled, tired, satisfied. But the smell remained. Copper. Old, tired metal. He shook his head. Air vent, he muttered to himself, though the vent above him hadn't worked in years. He switched off the lights and left the room. At 3:13 the next morning, the stain was back. Exactly the same shape, exactly the same size, like nothing had ever been cleaned at all. Mr. Lau stood at the door for a long moment before going in. His mop handle felt heavier that night, the water colder. He kneeled again, pressed the rag down harder, and whispered to no one, "I said go away!" He wasn't sure if he meant the stain or something else. That week, he started dreaming about the room. He saw the table covered in papers, half-empty cups, and ashtrays that hadn't been emptied in years. He saw a man in a white shirt sitting at the head of the table, his face hidden by the flickering light above. His hand tapped the wood, leaving small dark smears each time his fingers lifted. Tap, tap, tap. When he woke up, his palms smelled like rust. By the 5th night, his patience began to fray. He arrived earlier than usual, around 10:45 p.m., to get ahead of his schedule. He went straight to the meeting room, his mop still dry, and found the stain already there, larger now, reaching the table legs. He didn't hesitate. He opened a new bottle of bleach, poured half of it directly onto the floor, and began scrubbing with bare hands. The fumes burned his eyes, but he didn't stop. He rubbed until his cloth tore, until his fingers stung, until the air tasted like chemicals and regret. Finally, the stain began to fade. He sat back, panting, chest tight, eyes watering. And in the reflection of the polished table, he saw movement. Someone was sitting across from him. A woman. Hair tied back, face calm, pale as paper. Her mouth didn't move, but her eyes did. They looked straight at him and then down, toward the floor beneath his knees. He turned. The stain was gone. In its place, a wet handprint. Small, delicate, as if someone had pressed from below. Mr. Lau stumbled back and nearly dropped his rag. He blinked, wiped his face, and looked again. The patch was vanished. "Too tired," he muttered. "Too much work, not enough sleep." But when he picked up his mop, the handle was damp, sticky, and faintly warm. At the end of his shift, he avoided the elevators entirely. He took the stairs again, slowly, one hand gripping the rail. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the walls were exhaling around him. When he reached the lobby, he turned to glance at the directory board, the old glass panel still listing companies that no longer existed. 9th floor, East Wing Conference Room, reserved. Reserved for whom, he didn't know. It had said that for years. But this night, the text glowed faintly under the flickering light, as if someone had just typed it in. He walked home in silence. The smell of bleach followed him through the bus ride, through his apartment door, into the kitchen. It clung to his skin like sweat. When he placed his gloves on the counter, he saw something dark beneath the plastic. A mark, a patch, a perfect circle. He didn't touch it. He just sat at the small table, looked at his trembling hands, and whispered to the empty room, "I cleaned it already." But deep down he knew, some stains don't belong to walls or floors. They belong to people.
It was the quietest part of the building. The 9th floor restroom, men's on one end, women's on the other, had no windows, only a constant humming vent that exhaled recycled air like a mechanical lung. The tiles were cold to the touch. Their shine was his pride. He cleaned them every night, even though no one used them anymore. Or so he thought. Mr. Lau pushed the door open, the hinge sighing. His reflection greeted him in the long wall mirror, small, hunched, mop bucket at his side, the fluorescent light above flickering to a slow heartbeat rhythm. He had just dipped his rag into the disinfectant when he noticed something strange in the mirror. Not his face, not his posture. The angle. There was someone behind him. A woman. She stood near the last sink, head lowered, her hair clinging to her cheeks as if wet. The light above her blinked twice, then steadied. He froze, breath locked in his chest. He turned around. Nothing. Only the row of sinks, spotless. No footprints on the tile, no sound but the slow hum of the vent. He turned back to the mirror, and she was gone there too. He told himself he was seeing things. Maybe it was fatigue, bleach fumes, the smell of ammonia always made him dizzy. But then he heard it, the faint sound of water running. Not a steady flow, a pulse, a trickle, then stop, trickle, then stop. He walked toward the last sink. The faucet was dry, but the drain gurgled faintly, as if swallowing something thick. The smell hit him. Metal again, stronger this time. He leaned closer. A single bead of water clung to the tap. Dark red. He jerked back, nearly slipping. The bead fell into the porcelain, leaving a faint stain that spread like a bruise. He ran the tap. Clear water gushed out, washing the color away, yet for a heartbeat, the basin filled with something darker before it drained. He switched off the faucet and wiped his hands on his uniform. His fingers were shaking. That night, he avoided looking at the mirror. He cleaned the floor tiles instead, scrubbing the corners until his knees ached, the bucket sloshed, the mop squeaked, the air thickened with chemical smell. Then, footsteps. Soft, bare feet on tile.
behind him. He didn't look up, didn't breathe. The sound passed beside him, slow, deliberate, and stopped at the sink. He forced himself to glance sideways, just a little, just enough to see what wasn't there. In the mirror, water was dripping again, from a hand that wasn't his. A pale, translucent hand resting on the sink's edge, fingers twitching like they wanted to remember how to hold something. The sleeve of an office blouse soaked to the elbow. Mr. Lau whispered, "You don't belong here." The vent replied with a long, hollow sigh. When he turned fully, the restroom was empty once more, but the mop handle was wet, and his reflection was not alone. He left the restroom light on that night. He never did that before. Electricity cost money, and habits like that annoyed the daytime staff. But as he pushed his cart down the hall, the flicker of that fluorescent glow comforted him, until he noticed it flickering in rhythm with something else. Footsteps. Reflected in the metal elevator doors as he passed, a woman's silhouette walked a few steps behind him, close but never quite catching up. When he turned around, the hallway was vacant. Only his cart, only silence. He pressed his palm to his chest and felt his heart thud too slowly, as though afraid to draw attention. At 3:13 a.m., the restroom lights flicked off on their own. A distant splash echoed through the pipes, then quieted. When he returned the next evening, the mirror was fogged, though the air was cool and dry. On the glass, a faint outline remained, 5 fingers pressed against the surface. He wiped it clean, but it came back the next night, and the next. Every shift, the same handprint waited for him, smaller than his own, perfectly shaped, never fading. And each night, after the clock hit 3:13, the same sink began to drip again. Drop after drop, the water turning slightly pink before disappearing down the drain. He stopped wiping it away. He learned to let it run, because some stains, he now knew, were not meant to be cleaned.
The old supply closet on the 7th floor was never locked. It held broken vacuum heads, rusted mop buckets, and filing boxes that no one had touched in years. Mr. Lau only used it when his main closet ran low. He rarely opened the lower shelves. But that Tuesday night, he was searching for replacement gloves, and that's when he found the folder. It was labeled Staff Roster 1997 to 1999, Night Shift Only, written in red marker, smudged, forgotten. He hesitated, then sat on an overturned paint can and flipped it open. Dozens of pages. Handwritten timesheets, signatures, initials next to floor assignments, names he didn't recognize. But one name appeared over and over beside floor 9. Hua. Miss Hua. Always Tuesdays. Tuesdays. Always her. Mr. Lau ran his finger down the faded lines. The last entry was from March 23, 1999. She had signed it. Not in pencil, not faded ink. Fresh, blue ballpoint pen. Still wet. He touched the page, and the ink smudged across his fingertip. He froze. The paper didn't look aged at all. Crisp, white, like it had been printed this morning. He checked the date again. 1999. Almost 30 years ago. The closet light flickered. He closed the folder.
That night, on floor 9, everything felt colder. Even the broken vents were breathing softer. The hallway lights dimmed lower than usual, their glow stretched and tired. He didn't want to be there, not on Tuesday. He cleaned quickly, no lingering, no extra scrubbing, just enough to say he did the job. But the elevator wouldn't come. He pressed the button, waited. Nothing. So he took the stairs. On the third step down, his radio crackled, an old station that had long gone off air. A woman's voice hummed, soft, familiar. He turned it off. It stayed on. The melody drifted through the stairwell, weaving around him like perfume. He didn't recognize the song, but it felt like something from long ago, something forgotten by name, but not by feeling. When he reached the 7th floor landing, the door was open. That was the floor with the supply closet, the roster. The light inside was on again, and something had been written across the folder in red ink now. Tuesday is still mine. The next week, he didn't clean on Tuesday. He swapped shifts, called in a favor, traded with the young part-timer who mopped the lobby. He stayed home, slept early, tried not to think. But curiosity didn't sleep. Just before midnight, he called the building. No one answered. He arrived at 2:30 a.m., just to check. The lobby was dark. The elevators powered down, but floor 9 glowed faintly through the gaps in the stairwell. When he stepped onto the floor, it smelled different. Not bleach, not mildew, floral, old perfume, the kind you don't find in stores anymore. Heavy, powdered, worn by women who used to put on lipstick even for night shifts. The hallway was immaculate, tiles gleaming, bins empty, glass without a fingerprint in sight. Someone had cleaned, thoroughly, meticulously. He checked the mop closet. The mop was wet, still dripping, and across the mirror in the women's restroom, traced in fingertip moisture, were the words, "Still my day." From that week forward, he never worked Tuesday shifts again. But the building didn't forget. Every Tuesday morning, when the sun rose over the city and the first staff came in, the 9th floor looked cleaner than all the others. Always. And every Tuesday night, someone placed a single white flower in the trash bin outside office 913. The same flower, a white chrysanthemum, slightly wilted, still fragrant. He never touched it. He never asked. He just nodded each Wednesday morning and whispered under his breath, "Thank you, Miss Hua." And he swore, sometimes he heard a whisper back. Mr. Lau had long accepted that some rooms in the building held on to heat like memory, reluctant to let go. But the 9th floor break room was different. It wasn't just warm, it breathed warmth, like a mouth held just slightly open. He noticed it again one Wednesday night when the mop handle slipped in his damp palm. He wiped his forehead and stepped inside for a brief rest. The temperature was oppressive, heavy, thicker than the hallway just outside, as if the room hadn't cooled in decades, as if heat had soaked into the very walls, and time had stopped trying to regulate it. The fan on the ceiling spun half a rotation, then stopped. It always did that. Start, pause, never finish a circle. Mr. Lau dragged a folding chair from the corner, placed it near the vending machine, and sat. His knees cracked softly beneath him. The air tasted like stale rice. He looked up at the wall above the sink where a clock had once hung. Only the anchor screw remained now, rusted and alone. The outline of the plastic clock was still visible, cleaner than the surrounding wall. It had been gone for years, but his eyes always drifted there when he sat, like the room still expected it to be ticking. He stood and examined the fan, pulled the chain. Nothing. He climbed onto the counter to check the wiring, pried open the panel, and paused. The wires inside had been cleanly cut. No fray, no damage, just a deliberate snip. He stared at them for a long moment, then closed the panel. The fridge buzzed softly behind him. It never worked properly, its bulb long dead, its shelves mostly empty except for long-forgotten cans and rusting containers. But tonight, it was humming louder, like something breathing through metal. He turned. The hum stopped. And then something new, a faint sound, just beneath the mechanical buzz. Sobbing. Muffled, like a voice pressed against the inside wall of the fridge. He walked closer, put his ear to the cool metal door. Sobbing, then whispering, too quiet to understand, too human to ignore. He opened the door. Darkness. A blast of cold air pushed past him, colder than it should have been. For a fridge that barely functioned, the air inside felt unnatural, as if it had been sealed for winter. The top shelf held a single paper lunch bag. He reached for it, fingers trembling, and pulled it into the light. Inside, an old meal, wrapped in wax paper, a name scrawled on the outside in faded ink. Min, don't eat, Tuesday. The sandwich inside was moldless, fresh. He placed it gently on the counter, turned back to the fridge, and saw handprints on the inside of the door. Small ones, pressed from within. He closed it slowly. The vending machine clicked. Word. He hadn't touched it. A soda can rolled into the tray. Clunk. He bent down. It was a brand he hadn't seen in years. Zesto Orange Cola. The design hadn't been printed since the early 2000s. The expiration date read 2001. He placed it back inside the machine tray, heart pounding. Then the fan above him creaked, turned once, and stopped again. He didn't sit down for the rest of the shift. He finished the 9th floor and returned home before the clock struck 3:13 a.m. That night, he dreamed of a woman eating lunch alone, her back to the break room door, shoulders shaking, the clock above her spinning too fast, then falling off the wall and shattering. She never turned around. The next evening, Mr. Lau returned with a new clock. He installed it where the old one had once hung, set the time, and stepped back. The ticking echoed through the room. He smiled, tired but content. At exactly 2:45 a.m., while mopping the hallway, he passed by the break room again. The clock had stopped. Not just stopped, gone. The nail hung bare. No broken clock on the floor. No sound of ticking. Just heat. Rising. And behind the fridge door, something knocked twice. Soft. Insistent. Lonely. He whispered, "You're not forgotten," then turned off the light and let the room breathe in silence. Some things in the building refused to stay thrown away. Mr. Lau noticed it first in the far conference wing, just past Office 921. Each night he emptied the bins. Each night they refilled. Not with fresh wrappers or food containers, but with the same pieces of paper, the same ripped envelope, the same handwritten memo with smeared ink. As if someone had thrown it out and changed their mind, then done it again and again. The pages were always damp, not soaked, just lightly wet, like they had been held in a nervous hand for too long. One memo read, "Please process immediate resignation. I can't breathe on this floor anymore." No name, no date. He tossed it in his bin and moved on. Later that night, while cleaning outside the copy room, he heard something, faint, mechanical. Zrrr, check. Zrrr, check. He pushed open the copy room door. The paper shredder was running, but no one had fed it. A sheet dangled halfway in, torn, its edges scorched black, like it had been burned and retyped. He unplugged the machine. The motor stopped. He pulled the paper out. One sentence was still visible between the shredded lines. "We told her not to report it." No context, no signature. Just the soft smell of singed toner and office secrets. He wheeled his cart toward the janitor's chute at the end of the hallway. That's when he saw the trash bag move. It didn't fall, didn't shift from gravity. It wriggled. Once. Then again, like something inside was breathing or remembering how. He stood still. The hallway flickered. Silence swelled like a held breath. Then it stopped. He stepped closer and touched the plastic. Warm. Sweating. He knelt, opened the bag slowly, one edge at a time. Inside, paper, soaked with ink. One red necktie, coiled like a dead snake. A name tag, Mr. Thean, HR. And just as he closed the bag again, a voice whispered from within, "We never left." The next day, Mr. Lau checked the staff database. No Mr. Thean on record. Not in HR, not in any department. He checked old logs, paper ones, buried beneath the front desk cabinet. He found one entry, dated 1998. Thean Vu, HR, floor 9, resigned, deceased. No details, only a check mark in red ink beside the word handled. At 2:50 a.m. back on the 9th floor, Mr. Lau emptied the same trash bin from earlier. It was full again. But this time it held only shredded pieces of resignation letters. 6 of them, all the same handwriting. One read, "Please, I'm not safe here. They know what I saw." He reached for the mop, but it was gone. He turned. The cart stood 3 feet behind where he left it, mop upright. The wheels were wet, trailing faint streaks across the tile, leading back toward room 913. He didn't follow, not that night. Instead, he pulled the cart away from the door, whispered, "Not yet," and pressed the elevator button. As he waited, he heard the shredder start again. Zrrr, chuck, zrrr, chuck. The elevator took its time. When the doors opened, he stepped in. As they closed, he heard a voice behind him, soft, layered, like 3 mouths speaking at once. "We clean what they buried." Then silence. That night he placed the necktie in his own trash at home. In the morning, it was back in his mop bucket, still coiled, still red, still warm.
Some nights, the building breathed louder than usual. On this one, Mr. Lau paused just outside the freight elevator at 12:13 a.m., wiping sweat from his forehead with the sleeve of his shirt. He leaned against the cart, taking in the silence. And then, faintly, from somewhere beyond the stairwell, a sound. Pause. It was unmistakable. The slow drag of a broom across linoleum. He froze. He wasn't sweeping, and no one else worked this late. Not officially. He listened. It was distant, but not far. Somewhere below. So he followed. The stairwell echoed with each of his footsteps, but the sound didn't mask the rhythm of the broom. He stopped on floor 7. The sound continued. He descended again. Floor 6. Still there. One more. Floor 5. Silence. He opened the door slowly, expecting darkness, but the hall lights were on, every one of them, and the floor, spotless, too spotless. Dust patterns or a janitor's signature, scattered here, settled there, but these were unnatural. There were trails, perfect lines, thin as combed hair, moving in long, consistent sweeps from one side of the hallway to the other, as if someone had swept deliberately, lovingly, obsessively. He followed them, eyes scanning for any sign of life. No cart, no broom, no sound now, only the tick of a wall clock nearby, 2:33 a.m. He turned a corner and stopped. In front of the electrical closet, someone had propped open a small box. Inside, an old laminated ID card. He knelt and picked it up. His heart slowed. The photo was faded, the laminate cracked from time and heat, but the name was clear. Lau Min, Facilities Staff, Floor 9. Issued, 1996. Expired, never. He stared at it. Same face, same name, but the photo was older, much older, too old. He checked his own ID badge. Same name, same employee number, but his didn't look like it had been buried or exhumed. The air shifted. He heard the sound again. Closer. He turned, expecting someone, but saw no one. Only the motion sensor lights flickering at the hallway's end. He moved quickly, back toward the stairwell, badge in hand. When he reached the door, something else caught his eye. A broom leaned against the wall. Not his. Its bristles were worn down flat, the handle bent, and the label on the wood, carved in with a knife, read, "For Mr. Lau, keep going." He left it there. Back on the 9th floor, the air felt cooler. He sat in the break room and stared at the old ID for a long time, then checked the date again. He hadn't started until 2001. At least, that's what he remembered. But when he flipped the ID over, more text had appeared. Faded at first, then darker. Retained. Renewal unnecessary. Status permanent.
He placed it gently into the trash. It was back in his pocket the next night. The sweeping continued. Once a week, sometimes twice, always just out of reach, always in a hallway just cleared. One night, he followed it up the stairs instead. He reached floor 11, long condemned, sealed off after an electrical fire 10 years ago. The sound was clearer there, sweeping, steady, patient. But the door was chained shut. He stood outside it for a long time, forehead pressed to the cool metal, listening. No whispers, no calls, just work. Back home, he laid the 2 ID cards side by side, one clean, one faded, both his, neither expired. And he understood something then. There wasn't another janitor. There never had been. The building was just helping him remember that some jobs, once started, aren't meant to end.
Mr. Lau always left doors open behind him. It was a habit, a rule, a small safeguard. Open doors meant open exits. They let the light spill in. They let fear stay out. But that night, he forgot. Office 915 was just another room in a corridor of forgotten desks and abandoned swivel chairs. He didn't even remember opening it. The knob turned easily, the hinges didn't squeal, and the air inside smelled faintly like old printer ink and lemon cleaner. He stepped in, mop trailing behind, and flicked a switch. The light blinked to life, then steadied, pale, yellowed, dim. He walked in. The door swung shut behind him. Click. He turned, startled. There was no wind, no slope, no draft, but the door had latched, locked. He reached for the handle. It didn't turn, not even a budge. He stared at it for a long time, hand resting on the knob as if waiting for it to forgive him. Then the intercom crackled, a speaker embedded in the ceiling, an old square thing covered in dust. It hadn't worked for years. Crick, pop. Then, a voice. Hello? Is anyone there? A woman, breathless, tired. I've been waiting. Please, I just wanted to leave. I told them I was sorry. The voice faded into static. Then another. It's not clean. It's never clean, no matter how many times I try. Then silence. Then another. Mr. Lau, you're still here, aren't you? He stepped away from the center of the room. The lights above dimmed. Clean it all, or become one of us. Then silence. He stared up at the speaker. Dust drifted down, as if something behind the grill had exhaled. He moved to the desk in the corner. The drawers were already open. Inside, a cloth, old, stiff with dried bleach, and beneath it, his name, carved into the wood. L-A-U. Not written, etched. He ran his finger over the grooves. A soft vibration buzzed through the floor beneath him, like a cable carrying electricity from a source that shouldn't exist. He backed away. The phone on the desk rang. Once. Twice. He didn't touch it. It stopped. A voicemail clicked on. I stayed late. Just one more hour. That's all I said.
But the doors don't open after dark, do they, Mr. Lau? The recording ended with a sound like someone scrubbing furiously against tile. Then nothing. He moved to the window, but there was none. No glass, no view, just wallpaper, a faded imitation of a city skyline. This room was never meant to look out, only in. He returned to the door, jiggled the handle again. Still locked. Then he noticed it beneath the door. A single sheet of paper had been slipped under. He picked it up. A work order. Room 915. Status incomplete. Assigned to L. Min. Facilities. Instructions. Clean thoroughly. Remain until done. He looked at the date. March 3rd, 1999. He dropped the paper, stepped back. The light above the door flickered, and then the stain appeared. On the carpet behind him, dark, expanding. It hadn't been there before. A perfect circle, like something had bled through from below or above. He moved toward it. His boots squelched softly in the wetness. A whisper echoed through the vents. "Clean it!" His hands moved without thinking. He dropped to his knees, scrubbed harder. The cloth tore, his skin burned. But the stain only spread. Every motion made it worse, like rubbing oil into fire. Then the lights cut out. Total blackness. The intercom buzzed once more. "You're almost ready." Then, click. The door unlocked. Slowly, softly. Mr. Lau stood, breath ragged, and opened it. The hallway greeted him with its flickering lights and humming silence. Behind him, the stain was gone, but the air still smelled of sweat, regret, and ammonia. He didn't look back. He wouldn't go near room 915 again. Back at the ground floor, he checked the building's intercom system. Dusty, disconnected. No power, no network, no history. And yet, one small red light blinked. A voicemail. He pressed play. "Lau, you know what happens now." Then, static. There was a cabinet no one ever used, tucked between two emergency doors on floor 8, far from view. It wasn't on any inventory sheet. Mr. Lau had passed it for years without noticing. But tonight, something made him stop. It was locked, but the drawer was open just a crack. Not much, just enough to show the corner of a folder. Old, brown, fraying at the edges. He tugged the drawer open. Inside were hundreds of folders, each labeled by hand. He pulled the first one out. Huine, T, Night Custodian, 1981 to 1987. Status, retained. He flipped to the next. Lay, N, Temporary Contract, 1990 to 1992. Status, retained. Page after page. All night staff, all maintenance or janitorial, all dated, all labeled, retained. He felt something cold stir behind his spine. He kept digging. Most folders contained just a single page, a signed contract, a work schedule, and a termination request. None were accepted. Each termination form was stamped, "Request denied, coverage still required." Some had letters attached, handwritten, messy. "I can't do this anymore. I haven't seen my family in weeks. They said I could leave. Why can't I leave?" He opened one at random. Inside was a photograph. A janitor, smiling, holding a mop. Floor 9 behind him. Someone had written on the back, "Ming, first week, he still got hope." Mr. Lau's fingers trembled. He flipped to the final drawer. One file sat alone. Thicker, sealed with a rusted clip. No name on the front, just the word "pending." He opened it. Inside were blank forms, fresh, empty. Then, slowly, letters began appearing, ink bleeding into the paper like it was being written by invisible hands. Name, Lau, M. Position, facilities, floor 9. Start date, 2001. End date, dash. The rest filled in slowly. Pages fluttered. Then the last sheet printed itself. An evaluation. Work consistency, high. Compliance, high. Self-awareness, declining. Distance from exit, increasing. Status, retained. Effective, tonight. The drawer slammed shut. Mr. Lau staggered back, the folder still in hand. The emergency light above flickered red. Down the hall, the elevator doors opened on their own. No one inside, but a cleaning cart. His was already there. He hadn't brought it up. He hadn't pushed the button. Still, it waited. He walked slowly back to floor 9. The folder clutched against his chest. The lights on the floor were dimmed. The air smelled of old sweat and newer ink. When he returned to the janitor's closet, he found something odd. His locker, never used, was open. Inside, a new uniform, crisp, folded, slightly too large, and a name tag already pinned. Lau, full-time. He didn't remember putting it there, but he put it on because something in him understood. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a place, and places like this remember who cleans them. That night, he worked in silence. No music, no breaks, just floors, walls, glass, and time. He didn't look at the clocks, didn't check the door handles. He just moved from room to room as if he belonged. Back in the file cabinet on floor 8, another folder appeared, softly, as if slipped in by unseen hands. Lau, M. Night custodian, floor 9. Status, retained. Underlined twice, in red. Mr. Lau didn't believe in ghosts. Not the kind that rattled chains or screamed in empty rooms. But he did believe in memory. And sometimes memory had a face. Tonight, she was waiting by the supply closet. Not in the mirror, not in the sink. In the hallway, real, solid, still. He saw her from the end of the corridor, standing in the weak light cast by the flickering wall fixture, drenched, still, head bowed slightly, hair limp and dark like drowned fabric. No movement, no breath, but she was there, right where the spare mop buckets were stored, the closet he opened every single shift. And now, she waited beside it, like a sentinel or a warning. He took a step forward. Her head tilted, not toward him, away, as if she were listening to something inside the wall. The light above her blinked, once, twice, then stayed on. He pushed the cart slowly. Wheels creaked. When he got closer, she didn't vanish. That was the worst part. She stayed. Her clothes looked like they had once been a uniform, pale blue, cleaner's fabric, but time had twisted them into something soaked and heavy. He whispered, "Do you need help?" Her shoulders trembled, but she didn't speak. He reached for the closet door, and she raised her hand, not to touch him, just to gesture, a small motion, a signal. Not this door. He stopped. The closet door clicked open on its own. Just a few inches. Darkness within. Mop handles inside, tapping softly, like something shifting on its own. He reached in, and something grabbed his wrist. Ice cold, bony fingers, no grip strength, just a pressure, a memory. He yanked back, heart racing. Inside the closet, the supplies were untouched, but on the wall was a message written in streaked water. One stayed too long. He turned back. She was gone. He locked the closet, left it untouched. When he tried to push the cart down the hallway, the wheels refused to move. They spun in place, then locked. He looked back. She had returned, now standing at the end of the hallway, just past room 917, still watching, still soaked. He spoke louder this time. "What do you want?" The elevator behind her dinged. The doors opened. Empty. She stepped toward it, but didn't enter. She just stood near the threshold, as if waiting for someone else to follow. The cartwheels unlocked. Mr. Loud didn't follow her. Not that night. He pushed the cart away, down the opposite end of the hall, refusing to look back. But when he reached the stairwell, he noticed something in the corner. A slipper. Women's. Worn. Soaked. Still dripping. He left it there. Later, near the break room, he found a mirror propped against the wall. It hadn't been there before. And in it, his reflection. But she stood behind him. Close. Too close. Her eyes were gone, but she seemed to see everything. She didn't speak. She just raised one hand and pointed. Not at him, at the mop. That night, he left the mop in the closet. He scrubbed nothing, cleaned nothing, only walked the halls. When he passed the closet again, the door was open. The mop was gone. And on the inside wall, freshly scrawled, "We see those who see us." Mr. Lau had taken the stairs for nearly a week. After the locked door, after the whispers, after the woman in the hall. But tonight, his knees ached. The kind of deep ache that doesn't just come from age, it comes from weight, from carrying something for too long. So he pressed the elevator button. The light above flickered once, then glowed. The elevator arrived soundlessly. No chime, no shift in air. He stepped in, pressed G. The doors closed, but the numbers did not descend. They went up. 5, 6, 7, 8, then 9. He hadn't pressed it. The button for 9 wasn't even lit. Still, the elevator stopped. The doors opened, and he saw them. Rows of cubicles, bright lights, the sound of typing, soft and endless. Desks full of papers, fax machines buzzing, and people. Dozens of them, men in shirt sleeves, women in heels, phones to ears, fingers flying across keyboards. No voices, just movement, just work. All of them moving, busy, focused. But no one looked up. Not one face acknowledged the elevator. They just kept working. Like it mattered. Like it would never end. Mr. Lau didn't step out. He watched, frozen. The cubicles weren't supposed to be there. The floor had been empty for years. But now it was alive with industry. A ghost office frozen in eternal overtime. He whispered, "This isn't real." The woman at the desk closest to the elevator tilted her head slightly, not toward him, just enough to suggest she had heard, then resumed typing. The elevator beeped. He pressed G again. The doors stayed open. A man near the back dropped a folder. No one turned to help. He bent down, picked it up, and returned to his desk. Mr. Lau took a deep breath and tried again. G. Still nothing. Until a hand appeared, pressed the close button from inside. His. But he wasn't moving. The doors closed. The elevator descended. At the ground floor, he stepped out, heart pounding. He turned to see the floor indicator above the elevator doors. It was blank. No number. Just darkness. The next night, it happened again. He pressed 3. The elevator moved. Then 9. Always 9. He tried tricks, pressed 2 buttons at once, held the door open key, even wedged a screwdriver between the frame. Still 9. And always, they were there, typing, reading, pretending to live, but never looking up. Not even once. Until Thursday. He pressed B for basement. The elevator shuddered, paused, then 9. When the doors opened, the lights inside flickered violently. Half the cubicles were empty. The remaining workers were still, frozen. Their hands hovered above keyboards, their heads down, eyes closed? No, sewn shut. He stepped back. The man nearest the window stood up, turned his head, slowly, and smiled. Eyes still sewn, smile stretched too wide. He said nothing, but behind him the copier began to print pages. Each one read, "Still on the clock, still on the clock, still on the clock." Mr. Lau screamed for the elevator to close. It didn't, until the man took one step forward. Only then did the doors shut. The next day, the elevator was offline. The building engineer shrugged when asked, "Circuit's fine, but that car's been stuck on 9 all morning. Must be a glitch." Mr. Lau nodded, said nothing, walked to the stairwell, opened the door, and paused. There, taped to the wall, was a single page, printed, office memo. Dated 1999. Subject, notice overtime access. Floor 9 will remain active after hours. Clockouts voided until project conclusion. Signed at the bottom, Facilities Lead, Min Lau. His name, his title, his signature. He hadn't written it, but it was his handwriting. That night, he didn't press any buttons. He simply stepped into the elevator and waited. The light blinked. The car moved. And of course, 9.
Mr. Lau hadn't seen daylight in 3 days. At least, he didn't think so. Every time he tried to leave, the glass doors at the lobby would stay locked, even when the security alarm was off, even when the guard at the front desk was gone. He would reach for the handle, and the mop in his hand would twitch, just slightly, enough to make him pause. It didn't feel like wood anymore. It pulsed, faintly, in rhythm with his heartbeat. He told himself he'd throw it away. Every night he tried. Every morning it was back in the closet, standing upright, damp, waiting. That evening he didn't bother clocking in. There was no point. The time card machine printed the same message no matter what time he arrived. Shift ongoing. He walked the 9th floor without lights this time, letting the dim glow from the emergency strips lead him. The hallway carpet glistened faintly, like it had just been washed, but he hadn't touched it in days. Each office was immaculate. No dust, no paper out of place, no life. Only silence, that thick, swollen kind that fills a space when something unseen is listening. He entered room 913, the one he'd avoided since the beginning. The air was colder here, and heavier. It smelled of bleach and something older beneath it, something human. The walls had begun to change. Streaks of moisture crawled upward, black and thin as veins. In the center of the floor, the stain had returned, perfect circle, still wet. He sighed, picked up the mop, and began to clean. It was different this time. The mop didn't fight him. It guided him, dragged his arm in slow, deliberate arcs, as if the floor knew where it wanted to be wiped. He scrubbed for hours, or maybe minutes. Time no longer followed him here. He didn't stop until his hands cramped. When he finally stepped back, the floor was spotless, too spotless, the kind of shine you only see in dreams. Then, beneath the polish, faint letters began to appear, etched into the concrete beneath the wax, spelling words he couldn't deny. One more stain. He dropped the mop. When he turned toward the hallway, the lights were on again, every single one. And down the corridor, he saw his reflection on the glass window, or what was left of it. He could still see his uniform, his mop, his shape, but his face was gone. Just a blur, a fogged outline of where a person should be. He wiped at the glass. Nothing changed. Behind him, the elevator dinged once more. Floor 9. Of course. He walked to it without thinking. The doors opened. Inside, the panel was blank. No numbers, only a keyhole where G used to be. He stepped in. The doors shut. It didn't move. The intercom above crackled once more. A woman's voice this time. Soft, familiar. "You've done well, Mr. Lau." He froze.
One last room. He whispered, "Which one?" "The one you haven't cleaned yet." Static. Silence. Then the elevator began to rise. When it stopped, the indicator above the door flickered, but no number appeared. Only a dash, like a space that had been erased from the building's memory. The doors opened. The hallway looked identical, but everything was reversed. The numbers on the office doors backwards, the signs mirrored. Even his reflection on the windows faced the wrong way, smiling faintly. He felt the mop move in his hand again, tugging, guiding. So he followed. Room 913 stood waiting, door open. Inside, the stain had returned. This time it was shaped like a man lying down, arms at his sides, face blurred, and next to it a pair of work boots, wet, familiar, worn down. His. He knelt. He didn't know why. The air pressed against his chest like a weight. He mopped once, twice, a third time. The floor drank every stroke like thirst. And when he stood again, the reflection in the wax was smiling, not his smile, but grateful. He turned toward the door. The mop was lighter now, almost empty. He carried it to the elevator, pressed nothing. It descended anyway. When the doors opened at the lobby, dawn had returned. Light streamed through the glass doors. He walked to them, reached for the handle. This time, it turned. He stepped out into the morning haze, breathing in the city's polluted air like freedom. But when he looked at his hands, they were fading. Fingers first, then wrists, then sleeves, until only the reflection on the glass remained. A faint outline of a man with a mop, still standing just inside the door. Still cleaning. Still there.
They say no one works the night shift anymore. At least, not officially. The building changed hands 5 years ago. New owners, new name, new carpet in the lobby. But floor 9? That was never touched. The contractor said it was too costly to renovate. Old wiring, unstable floor plan, too many complaints about strange drafts. So they sealed it off, at least on paper. But the cleaning crew still talks about it. Every now and then, a new janitor will take the stairs too far, one flight too many, find themselves on the 9th floor, unsure why they kept walking. And every time, the hallway is spotless, dustless, waxed, shining under the dim emergency lights like someone had just polished it an hour before. And the air? Bleach, slightly metallic, like old memory. Hoa was one of the new girls, early 20s, part-time. She was quiet, respectful. But one night she saw something in the mirror on the 7th floor. A woman, hair soaked, eyes closed, standing just behind her. When she turned around, there was nothing, but her reflection wasn't alone. She asked the senior janitor about it. The old man just nodded and said, "That's the floor 9 woman. She checks who's still loyal." Hoa never cleaned past 2 a.m. again. And then there was Tam, late 40s, worked fast, didn't scare easy, until he heard the mop. Shh, shh, shh.
just past room 913. He thought it was one of the others. He called out. No reply. When he rounded the corner, the hallway was empty, except for the faint drag marks in the wax. Perfect lines, like someone cleaning invisible dust. He never went back. But someone does. They all know it. The supply room on 9 is always stocked, but no one orders supplies for it. The garbage bins? Always empty, even on days when the building's full of tenants. One intern, curious and bold, once left a soda can in the break room up there. The next day, it was gone, but in its place, a folded paper towel with "Please respect the space" written in tight, formal script. They say if you stay quiet, at exactly 3:13 a.m., you'll hear the elevator stop on floor 9. No one calls it. No one's inside. But the doors open. And if you're near enough to peek in, sometimes there's a shape reflected in the brushed steel walls. A man, slim, tired, in a white janitor shirt. No face, just motion, always holding a mop. Some nights the glass at the lobby fogs up from the inside. No weather, no breath, just words written backwards. Still here. And the door is always clean. No fingerprints, no smudges, even though no one cleans it anymore. Not officially. A new cleaning company tried to take over once. First week, they assigned someone to mop all 12 floors. The worker, young guy, finished everything except 9. He said the elevator wouldn't open. He said the stairs stopped at 8. He said his cart got stuck outside a hallway with no lights. He never returned for his second shift. When they checked his locker, it was empty, except for a key card with "retained" scratched into the plastic. No one saw him again. But there's always one floor that never gets dusty. Always one hallway where the lights hum softly. Always one break room with the clock just slightly wrong. And the mirror in the women's restroom? Sometimes it fogs, even when the air is dry, even when the building is empty. And in that fog, a figure stands behind you, holding a mop, not threatening, just watching, just checking. If you're quiet enough, you'll hear humming, low, monotone, a song that no one recognizes, a lullaby, maybe, a routine, a rhythm. Some say he's still working off a contract that never expired. Some say he stayed too long, cleaned too well, and the building kept him. Some say he never existed at all. But those who've stayed late know better. They've felt the mop pass behind them when they were alone. They've seen the ghost cart tucked neatly beside a door no one uses. They've read the words etched softly into the floor wax. One more stain. And somewhere, in the belly of the building that forgot to die, a janitor moves from room to room, quietly wiping away the parts no one else sees, smiling faintly. No reflection, no shadow, no time card. Because some shifts never end, and some devotion goes beyond death.